CERN, the massive and often debated laboratory, located in Switzerland, has been highly speculated to be the subject of conspiracy, and often quoted as potentially dangerous by world-renowned physicists and professors. The research facility has the world's largest hadron collider, which is a device that operates by smashing particles together at the speed of light, and lately has been rumored to be more than it seems, and may in fact hold some dark secrets in which the mind could not even imagine. Join me as we take a look at the history of CERN and discover what truly lies beneath the surface. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, also known as CERN, is a European research organization that operates the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. Established in 1954, the organization is based in a northwest suburb of Geneva on the Franco-Swiss border and has 23 member states, with Israel being the only non-European country granted full membership. CERN is also an official United Nations observer. CERN's main function is to provide the particle accelerators and other infrastructure needed for high-energy physics research. As a result, numerous experiments have been constructed at CERN through the international collaborations. CERN is also the site of the Large Hadron Collider, or also known as the LHC, which is the world's largest and highest energy particle collider in existence. The main site hosts a large computing facility, which is primarily used to store and analyze data from experiments. Researchers need remote access to these facilities, and in effect, the lab has historically been a major wide-area network. In addition to this, CERN is also the birthplace of the World Wide Web. The convention establishing CERN was ratified on September 29 of 1954 by 12 countries in Western Europe, and at the 6th session of the CERN Council, which took place in Paris from June 29 through July 1st of 1953, the convention was gradually ratified by the 12 founding member states, that of being Belgium, Denmark, France, the Federal Republic of Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and Yugoslavia. CERN operates a network of 7 accelerators and 2 decelerators, and some additional small accelerators as well. Each machine in the chain increases the energy of particle beams before delivering them to experiments or to the next powerful accelerator. Many activities at CERN currently involve operating the Large Hadron Collider and the experiments for it. The tunnel for the LHC is located 100 meters underground between the Geneva International Airport and the nearby Jura Mountains. The LHC first started operations in 2008, when the first beam circulated through the entire LHC on September of the same year, but the system failed 10 days later because of a faulty magnet connection, and it was stopped for repairs. In November of the following year, the LHC resumed operation, by successfully circulating two beams, each with an energy of 3.5 tera-electron volts, and on March 30th of 2010, the LHC successfully collided two proton beams with 3.5 tera-electron volts per proton, resulting in a 7 teravolt collision. However, this was just the start of what was needed for the expected discovery of the Higgs boson. When the 7 teravolt experimental period ended, the LHC increased the energy levels to 8 teravolts, starting on March of 2012, and soon began particle collisions at that energy. And in July of 2012, CERN scientists announced the discovery of a new subatomic particle that was later confirmed to be the Higgs boson. And in the early year of 2013, the LHC was deactivated for a 2-year maintenance period to strengthen the electrical connections between the magnets inside the accelerator and for other upgrades that were not listed. And on April 5th of 2015, after 2 years of maintenance and consolidation, the LHC restarted for a second run with a 6.5 teravolt experiment, which was performed on April 10th of the same year. And in 2016, the design collision rate was succeeded for the first time. From their own words, this is what they have to say about the facility. At CERN, our work helps to uncover what the universe is made of and how it works. We do this by providing a unique range of particle accelerator facilities to advance the boundaries of human knowledge. Our laboratory, which was established in 1954, has become a prime example of international collaboration. Our mission at the facility is to provide a unique range of particle accelerator facilities that enable research at the forefront of human knowledge, perform world-class research in fundamental physics, and unite people from all over the world to push the frontiers of science and technology for the benefit of all. Physicists and engineers at CERN use the world's largest and most complex scientific instruments to study the basic constituents of matter. We want to advance the boundaries of human knowledge by delving into the smallest building blocks of our universe. Accelerators boost beams of particles to high energies before the beams are made to collide with each other. Detectors observe and record the results of these collisions. Today, our understanding of matter goes much deeper than the nucleus, and CERN's main area of research is particle physics. At the beginning of the 1970s, physicists realized that there are very close ties between two of the four fundamental forces, the weak force and the electromagnetic force. These two forces can be described within the same unified theory, which forms the basis of the Standard Model. The basic equations of the unified theory correctly describe the two forces in terms of a single electroweak force, and its associated force carrying particles, namely the photon. The finding of the Higgs boson is not the end of our story. The physicists have to study this particle. Furthermore, many questions remain unanswered. For instance, what is the nature of dark matter, which makes up a large part of the universe? Why is there far more matter than antimatter? And many other questions. One very strange phenomenon that has become more popular since 2012 is what has come to be called the Mandela effect. It deals with the preponderance of people who have very vivid memories of things being differently than they actually are, such as recalling people, events, and places differently than they are represented in actual reality. A sort of mass memory loss or confusion of the same facts or details by a large number of people. This can apply to popular culture, such as movies or music, company brands, and even extending to historical events and beyond. It has even gone as far as people remembering the actual geography of the world differently than what it actually is. The theory itself has its origins in 2010 when many people claimed that they remembered seeing on the news that Nelson Mandela, who was the president of South Africa at the time, had died in prison in the 1980s. But as it turns out, that was not the case, and that he in fact was still alive at the time, and actually living until 2013, when he died from a respiratory illness at his home. This perplexed many, as they so vividly remembered his death in the 80s. And when people started posting this occurrence online, there was a vast number of others who seemed to share this memory of the same thing, claiming they clearly recalled seeing it on the news, and could even envision the reports, and even taught about it in school. The name eventually stuck as a new phenomena that became a persistent feature of the unexplained and paranormal, and the term Mandela effect, encompassing all manner of our reality, that for whatever reason, a massive number of people remember completely wrong, perhaps suggesting the possibility of alternate parallel dimensions beyond our comprehension. A very common part of the Mandela effect with regards to geography is the surprisingly large number of people who distinctly remember whole countries being different shapes, sizes, or in different positions than they were before. New Zealand is located to the far southeast of Australia, approximately 1,200 miles from the mainland, but for many, this might be quite a surprise. It appears that there is a large and very vocal population of people who actually live in New Zealand who insist that this is wrong according to their memory, and they insist that it is supposed to be much further south than it is. The phenomena doesn't merely stop in New Zealand though, as many have reported the same occurrences in many nations such as Greenland, Japan, Cuba, and even some in the United States, claiming that they remember it having 52 states instead of 50. Besides geographical changes, there's many false memories of movies, books, music, and branding. Some of these include famous movie quotes, brands of cereal, children's books, and even Bible passages. One theory of the Mandela effect is that it's some sort of mysterious mass shift between two different realities, which proposes that there are infinite parallel and offshoot universes coexisting with ours, and infinite versions of reality itself. In some of these alternative dimensions, the difference could be very slight, and in another, things could be more dramatic, or perhaps even something worse. In relation to the Mandela effect, the idea is that, at some point, a number of people have transferred over to a different timeline in a parallel dimension while retaining the memories of how things were in their own reality. You may be asking yourself, so what does this have to do with CERN? Interestingly enough, another theory comes up, and it goes like this. CERN back in 2012, coincidentally when the world was supposed to end, opened up a portal, or a gateway, in the very fabric of space-time, whether intentional or deliberately, found the answer to time travel, and proceeded to experiment with reality itself, changing small and minute details, perhaps just to see if they could, or if they could have an impact on our reality as a whole. Whether this be science fiction or hold some merit of truth would be impossible to answer, but it is quite strange how these occurrences seem to have started occurring after the discovery of the Higgs boson particle in the same year. Secret societies, shadow governments, powers that be, or simply the Illuminati. There's much on the subject of them, from simply being men of status and doing charity events, formal meetings, and public service work, all the way to having full totalitarian control behind the scenes of world events and finances, with their secrecy and blatant public acknowledgement of government influence. It's no wonder that many theories about their influence arise on the subject of the strange and unexplained. The vast amount of information, stories, and symbolism around them is enough to fill the books in all the world. That being said though, a very odd and strange opening ceremony took place in 2016 when the Gotthard Tunnel, located in Switzerland, approximately 211 miles from the CERN facility, was officially opened. Although officially being a high-speed transportation railway through the Alps, many theorize that there is actually a deeper agenda going on, funded by the men behind the curtain, so to speak, with rumors and whispers from the servicemen on the railways that there are secret tunnels that approximately get cargo for CERN, that their scientists are often spotted with equipment and experimenting, and that the workers claim that they are told not to repeat anything they see or hear. Although none of this can be confirmed 100%, the ceremony that took place is something most seem to question, involving high-level officials and being a project of costing approximately 11 billion euro. The symbolism and ritualistic behavior displayed seems off-putting for such a high investment, don't you think? The Anunnaki are a group of deities of the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians in the earliest Sumerian writings about them, which come from the post-Akkadian period. The Anunnaki are deities in the pantheon descendants of An and Ki, the god of the heavens and the goddess of the earth, and their primary function was to decree the fates of humanity. The earliest known usage of the term Anunnaki comes from inscriptions written during the reign of Judea in 2124 BC in the 3rd dynasty of ancient Ur. In the earliest texts, the term is applied to the most powerful and important deities in the Sumerian pantheon, the descendants of the sky god, An. Although certain deities are described as members of the Anunnaki, no complete list of names of all the Anunnaki has survived, and they are usually only referred to as a cohesive group in literary texts. Furthermore, it is not known how many Anunnaki there were, or what their defined function was. Originally, the Anunnaki appear to have been heavenly deities with immense powers. The Anunnaki in the poem do homage to Enki, sing hymns of praise in his honor, and take up their dwelling among the people of Sumer. The same composition twice states that the Anunnaki decree the fates of mankind. These beings, being written in ancient history, are believed by many scholars and biblical writers as deriving from one specific religion. A reference to the Tower of Babel, and how at one point all languages were one, seemed to paint the picture as to exactly what was happening. The writings of Enoch and other biblical texts point to something rather specific. The theory for these entities goes like this. During Genesis, there was one God and angelic beings created by God, and at some point during this period, there was a group of angels called the Watchers, whose main function was to look after mankind and report to God. During some time, rather through the influence of Lucifer, the fallen angel, or the leaders of the group, called Samjaza and Azazel, they all made a pact with one another to corrupt mankind and the human genome, but were ultimately imprisoned for their transgression, and shortly after, all they had done to the earth was washed away by the great flood. Now after the flood, it is said that somehow through ancient angelic technology, the descendant of Ham, one of Noah's sons, who many speculate to be Gilgamesh, king of Ur, discovered these pre-flood technologies and implemented them into society once again. Technologies such as DNA manipulation, magic, and even matter manipulation. During this time period and onwards, these technologies have even been suggested to be that of opening gateways through planes of existence, or portals. The Tower of Babel itself has been widely speculated to be an ancient stargate, and after the scattering of nations, the technology was lost once again. With these theories in mind, many have come to the conclusion that all ancient deities and gods all derive from the time of Genesis, and have through the times been called different names, and have had different functionalities, while still maintaining the core of what they are. Now many of you are probably asking, what this has to do with CERN? Well, according to many conspiracy theorists, perhaps is it possible that CERN is simply a modern-day Stargate, built from ancient technology, having the ability to open up dimensions into the very fabric of matter, and to pull something through. Whether or not that be the case, interestingly enough, statues of the Hindu goddess Shiva, god of death and destruction, are located at the HQ in the garden, perhaps representing what's to come. And as a fun fact, according to Hinduism, the highest form of Shiva is formless, limitless, transcendent, and unchanging, the ultimate metaphysical reality, and the primal soul of self and the universe. St. Genus Poli is a village located at the foot of the Jura Mountains, bordering the Swiss frontier. It is part of the cross-border area of Geneva, with a population of almost 14,000 inhabitants. A large portion of CERN is located within the territory of St. Genès Poli. The Alice experiment is located on the periphery of the town, and the main entrance to the primary CERN campus and the Atlas experiment are located only 3 kilometers from the center of St. Genès. Before it was given the name of St. Genès Poli in 1887, the 2 towns were named St. Genix, and the other town being named Poli. Used to be a small Roman city by the name of Apolliacum. Now, before discussing the ancient city of Apolliacum, we should first look into the history of St. Genès himself. The origin of the name of the town can be traced back to an individual who is surrounded by legends. It is generally believed the name St. Genès came from St. Genesi, also known as Genesius of Rome, a legendary Christian martyr. The legend of St. Genesius of Rome states that Genesius, prior to his conversion, was once the leader of a theatrical group in Rome. In his plays, he would ridicule Christianity, especially certain rites. In one such performance, which was to be in front of an audience containing the Emperor Diocletian, Genesius was going to ridicule the sacrament of baptism. As the play began, Genesius took on his role of a person stricken ill, and according to legend, 2 other actors asked him what was wrong, and Genesius said he felt he had a weight on him that he wanted removed. In the next scene, 2 different actors dressed as a priest and an exorcist, and when the actors asked why he wanted to alleviate his sickness, Genesius expressed he wanted to be baptized. It was shortly after this point in the play when Genesius broke character and claimed to see actual angels, and asked to be baptized on stage for real. This completely outraged the emperor, but Genesius persisted in his request, even to the point of torture and death by beheading. Though recognized as a legend, there is a slice of truth behind the story of Genesius. The historical account of Genesius of Arles is often combined with the legend of Genesius of Rome. Genesius of Arles was a notary who was martyred by Maximianus in the year 303 AD. It is said while he was performing his secretarial duties, a decree of persecution against Christians was read out loud. Upon hearing this, he became outraged, and Genesius threw his tablets down to the magistrate's feet and fled. But he was then later captured and executed. Interestingly enough, the account of this mysterious individual does not end here. It is believed by scholars that Genesius of Arles is also the same as the Spanish saint Ginés de la Jara. If true, this adds more depth to the story. The town of Poli was a small Roman city that likely took its name from the Latin Apolliacum. It is believed it was given that name out of dedication to the god Apollon. Apollon can be identified with the biblical Apollyon, or Abaddon, in the New Testament, the Greek god Apollo, and Nimrod of the Old Testament, who is sometimes known as the man of many names, just like Genesius, who could be called the saint of many names. The connections between Nimrod, Apollo, and Abaddon or Apollyon have been thoroughly researched, but there are a few more interesting details not commonly discussed. Apollo was worshipped by the Romans as well as the Greeks. Apollo was equated with the Celtic god Atepomoris. These 2 characters were combined to create Apollo Atapomaris, which can be translated as the Great Horseman, or possessing a great horse. In the Celtic belief, horses were closely related to the sun. The interesting thing to note is the connection between this idea of Apollo being associated with horses in France, where part of the LHC and CERN resides, and what the Book of Revelation states about Abaddon, where it says, "And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as if it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name be Apollyon. Given these descriptions, is it possible CERN will have something to do with the opening of the bottomless pit described in Revelations 9? In a summary of what we have just learned, the town that the LHC complex is situated on is St. Genus Poli, and was in Roman times called Apolliacum, the town where an ancient temple was built and dedicated to Apollyon, the Greek name meaning destroyer, given description in Revelations 9 verse 11, with the angel's name, Apollyon, being also identified as the king of the demonic locust, described in Revelations 3 verse 10. In one manuscript, instead of Apollyon, the text reads Apollo, the Greek god of death and pestilence, as well as of the sun. Apollyon is no doubt the correct reading, but the name Apollo was often linked in ancient Greek writings with the verb polyame or apollio, which translates to destroy. Along with this, interestingly enough, the word CERN can be found in ancient mythology. For example, in Dorset, England, there is the legend of the Cerne Abyss giant, which is often associated with fertility in Celtic mythology. The god Cernunnos is depicted as having antlers or horns. He is also shown with torques around his neck and hanging from his antlers. Because of the association with various creatures, Cernunnos is sometimes described by scholars as the Lord of Beasts. Cernunnos is also sometimes recognized as associated with sailors, commerce, and material wealth, and some scholars say that there is a possible connection with this reference in Revelations 18. Cernunnos has also been associated with the Baphomet, an important deity in occultism. The myth of Cernunnos is explained in further and more provocative detail in Italian witchcraft, where in their myths and legends, the god Cernunnos is only known as CERN, and has a brother named Lupus. CERN is seen as the stag god, while Lupus is seen as the wolf god. It is said on the day of the spring equinox, Lupus was hit by a bolt of lightning shaped like an arrow while hunting a deer. Lupus then died, and on the next morning rose from the underworld as the sun. When CERN learned of his brother's death, he then became the god of this world. The only thing left behind from the death of Lupus was his wolf skin, which was found in the forest by another hunter, and as it turned out, the pelt had magical powers to transform men into wolves. There's quite a very interesting parallel to the story in the Book of Jasher concerning Nimrod, or as some claim to be Gilgamesh, as it says this: And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bare a son, and they called his name Nimrod, saying, At that time the sons of men began to rebel and transgress against God, and the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. And the garments of skin which God made for Adam and his wife, when they went out of the garden, were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to God, he gave them to Methuselah his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them to the ark, and they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole those garments from Noah his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and he was 20 years old when he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments, and God gave him might and strength. And he was a mighty hunter in the earth, yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field. And he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered upon them the animals before the Lord. Jasher, chapter 7, verse 23 through 30. Later on, we get the rest of the story, where it says, "And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, and he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all of his battles. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their lord and king. And they all dwelt with him in the city of Shinar. And Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood until those days." Jasher, chapter 7, verse 44 through 46. After reading the story, scholars believe that the connection of Nimrod and the story of Cernobis and his brother may be one and the same, and considering the history of the Tower of Babel and ancient angelic technology, one has to question, is there a connection? There are many ways to make connections and assign biblical identities to various myths surrounding CERN. Whether that be the case or not is up for debate, but with many stories and many strange things taking place around this laboratory, from strange lights and weather phenomenon in the skies, to mass memory loss and confusion, to ancient Middle Eastern roots and forgotten technologies, and even some rumors of them making contact with entities already. We may never know for sure, but as science and engineering pushes the boundaries, one can only question, how far can you push before you fall into the abyss? Thanks for watching. Till next time.
Oh.